Do you remember the man who stood in front of television cameras begging for the safe return of his missing wife and children, only for investigators to discover that he was responsible for their disappearance? His name was Chris Watts, and this is one of the most shocking true crime cases in American history. The story begins with a man named Chris Watts. Chris was 33 years old when this story began. He lived in the small city of Frederick, Colorado, a quiet suburban community located just north of Denver. To neighbors, Chris seemed like an ordinary family man. He was married to a woman named Shanann Watts, a successful and outgoing woman who was well known among friends and family for her energetic personality and strong work ethic. Together, Chris and Shanann appeared to have built the perfect life. They lived in a beautiful home. They were raising 2 young daughters, Bella and Celeste, and they were expecting a 3rd child. From the outside, they looked like a happy American family, the kind of family you would expect to see in a television commercial. Chris worked for an oil and gas company called Anadarko Petroleum. His job involved maintaining oil field equipment across Colorado. Meanwhile, Shanann worked in direct sales and frequently shared parts of their family life on social media. To many people watching online, the Watts family seemed happy. But what nobody knew was that serious problems had begun developing behind closed doors. Financial stress had created tension in the marriage. Arguments had become more frequent, and Chris had started feeling increasingly disconnected from the life he had built. Then something happened that would change everything. While working at Anadarko, Chris met a woman named Nicole Kessinger. She was a co-worker. At first, their interactions were professional, but over time, Chris became attracted to her. The two began spending more time together. Eventually, that attraction turned into a secret affair. For Chris, the relationship offered something he felt was missing from his life: freedom, excitement, a chance to imagine a completely different future. As the affair grew more serious, investigators would later discover that Chris had begun talking about a life with Nicole, a fresh start, a new beginning. But there was one problem. He was still married. He still had 2 children, and a 3rd child was on the way. According to investigators, Chris found himself caught between 2 worlds: the family he already had, and the life he suddenly wanted. What happened next would shock the entire country, because within weeks, Chris Watts would become the focus of one of the most disturbing murder investigations in modern American history. At first, nobody suspected anything. Chris continued going to work. He continued spending time with his family, and whenever he was around other people, he appeared calm and normal. But investigators would later discover that while Chris was building a relationship with Nicole, his marriage was rapidly falling apart. According to family members and friends, Shanann had started noticing changes in her husband. He seemed distant, less affectionate, less interested in spending time together. The man she had married no longer seemed like the same person. As the weeks passed, Shanann became increasingly concerned about the future of their marriage. What she didn't know was that Chris was already imagining a completely different future. A future without her. A future without the responsibilities of being a husband and father. At least, that's what prosecutors would later argue. During the summer of 2018, Chris and Nicole spent more time together. They went on dates, talked about the future, and according to investigators, Chris gave the impression that his marriage was nearing its end. Meanwhile, Shanann was trying to save the relationship. She was pregnant with their 3rd child, a baby boy they planned to name Nico. Despite the problems, she still hoped the family could stay together, but Chris appeared to be moving in a different direction. Then came August 13th, 2018, a day that would change everything. That morning, after Shanann returned home from a business trip, the Watts family was together inside their house for the last time. It was late, almost 2 o'clock in the morning. A neighbor's security camera captured Shanann walking through the front door carrying her luggage. She had no idea that her life was about to come to an end. Inside the home, Chris was waiting. Their daughters, Bella and Celeste, were asleep upstairs. The neighborhood was quiet. Nothing seemed out of place. But according to Chris Watts' later confession, he and Shanann had a serious conversation about the state of their marriage. The relationship had been deteriorating for months. Trust had been broken. Arguments had become more frequent, and the future of their marriage was uncertain. What exactly was said during that conversation may never be fully known, but investigators believe that sometime during the early morning hours, Chris attacked Shanann inside the house. According to his confession, he strangled her. By the time the encounter was over, Shanann was dead. She was 15 weeks pregnant with their unborn son, Nico. After killing Shanann inside the family home, he also killed his 2 daughters during the early morning hours of August 13th, 2018. What happened next would shock even experienced investigators. Rather than calling 911, rather than reporting what had happened, investigators say Chris immediately began trying to cover up the crime. As dawn approached, he started preparing to leave the house. Around 5:30 that morning, a neighbor's security camera recorded him backing his work truck into the driveway. Normally, he parked on the street. That morning was different. According to investigators, Chris loaded family's body into the truck before leaving for work. Then he drove to a remote Anadarko petroleum oil site where he was scheduled to work that day, where he disposed of their body. To anyone who saw him, it looked like a normal Monday morning. A husband leaving for work. Nothing unusual, nothing suspicious. But investigators would later discover that this trip was not part of an ordinary workday. It was part of an effort to hide what had happened inside the Watts home only hours earlier. Meanwhile, friends and family had no idea that anything was wrong. They believed Shanann was simply at home with her daughters. But within a few hours, concern would begin to grow. Hours later, Shanann's friend became worried. She had a doctor's appointment scheduled that morning, but she never showed up. Calls went unanswered. Text messages received no response. And for anyone who knew Shanann, that immediately raised alarms. This wasn't normal. Something was wrong, very wrong. Concerned, her friend drove directly to the Watts residence. When she arrived, she noticed Shanann's vehicle was still parked in the garage. Her shoes were inside. Her purse was inside. Her medication was inside. Nothing suggested she had left voluntarily. That's when police were called. When officers arrived at the Watts home, Chris appeared calm. Too calm. At least, that's how some observers would later describe it. If your pregnant wife and 2 daughters suddenly vanished without explanation, most people would be frantic, pacing, calling friends, searching the neighborhood, desperately trying to find answers. But Chris seemed strangely composed. At the time, however, police had no reason to believe a crime had occurred. Their job was simply to locate a missing family, nothing more. As officers searched the house, they quickly noticed something unusual. Shanann's purse was still inside, her phone was still inside, her medication was still inside. Even her vehicle remained parked in the garage. To investigators, these details were troubling. People don't usually leave home without their phone. A pregnant woman doesn't typically disappear without taking important medication, and mothers rarely leave their children behind without telling anyone. The situation wasn't making sense. Then police reviewed surveillance footage from a neighbor's security camera. The neighbor invited Chris inside to watch it with officers. As the footage played, everyone focused on the screen. The video showed Chris backing his truck into the driveway during the early morning hours, something that wasn't part of his normal routine. As investigators watched Chris watching the footage, they noticed something else. He appeared nervous, fidgeting, restless, unable to stand still. The neighbor would later tell investigators that Chris wasn't acting like himself, and detectives took notice. For days, Chris maintained that he had no idea where his family was. He appeared on local television, asked for their safe return, and pleaded with anyone who knew something to come forward. But behind the scenes, detectives were uncovering evidence that contradicted his story. The pressure continued to build. Over the next several days, investigators worked around the clock. They analyzed phone records, reviewed text messages, examined financial transactions, interviewed friends and family members. Every lead pointed them closer to the truth. and one discovery immediately stood out. Chris Watts was having an affair. The revelation changed the entire direction of the investigation. Now detectives had something they previously lacked: a possible motive. As detectives learned more about Chris's relationship with Nicole Kessinger, they began seeing a pattern. Chris had been spending significant amounts of time with her. He had searched online for vacation destinations. He had talked about a future together. And according to investigators, he appeared increasingly dissatisfied with his marriage. The image of the perfect family was beginning to crack. What people saw on social media was very different from what was happening behind closed doors. As pressure mounted, investigators decided to bring Chris in for further questioning. They also asked him to take a polygraph examination. Chris agreed, confidently, at least at first. The test would become one of the most famous moments in modern true crime history. After the examination was completed, the examiner sat across from Chris and delivered devastating news. The results indicated deception. In simple terms, investigators believed he was lying. The atmosphere in the room changed immediately. The conversation became more direct, more confrontational. The investigators no longer viewed Chris as a worried husband. They viewed him as their primary suspect. As questioning continued, Chris's story began to unravel. Details changed. Timelines shifted. Explanations no longer matched the evidence. The pressure was becoming impossible to ignore. Finally, after hours of questioning, Chris admitted that he had not been truthful. And from that moment forward, the case took a dramatic turn. Investigators would later uncover evidence leading them to an Anadarko petroleum oil site, where Chris had worked on the morning his family disappeared. The location was remote, quiet, far from public view. It was there that detectives discovered critical evidence connected to the case, evidence that confirmed their worst fears. The missing persons investigation was over. This was now a homicide investigation. The discovery shocked the nation. News outlets across America carried the story. People struggled to understand how a man who appeared so ordinary could be connected to such a horrific crime. Neighbors couldn't believe it. Friends couldn't believe it. Even experienced investigators found themselves asking the same question. Why? Why would someone destroy the very family he had spent years building? According to prosecutors, the answer came down to motive. Chris wanted a different life, a life with Nicole Kessinger, a life free from the responsibilities and commitments of his marriage. Rather than ending the relationship through divorce, investigators argued that Chris chose a far darker path, one that would change countless lives forever. Faced with overwhelming evidence, Chris Watts eventually entered a guilty plea. There would be no lengthy public trial, no jury deciding his fate. Instead, he admitted responsibility and accepted multiple life sentences without the possibility of parole. Legally, the case was over, but emotionally, many questions remained. Questions about motive, questions about warning signs, questions about whether anyone could have seen it coming. Even today, years later, the Chris Watts case remains one of the most discussed true crime stories in America. If you enjoy true crime documentaries, mysteries, and real criminal investigations, subscribe to this channel for more stories from across America.